Meanwhile, South Africa is monitoring the situation in the Red Sea. The rebels from Yemen have been targeting vessels, particularly from Western countries, carrying goods to other parts of the world. The oil company BP announced that it will also pause shipping of oil because of security challenges. SABC International News Editor Sophie Mokoena spoke to Minister of International Relations, Dr. Naledi Pandor, on a range of issues.
Sophie, greetings and greetings to your viewers as well. There is a resolution that is before the United Nations, which should be voted on later today. It does propose a ceasefire, but we continue to see wording that doesn't suggest a permanent end to the current war on Gaza. So I think the collective global community has still to do much more to bring this war to an end. But the resolution is slightly, in my view, more positive in terms of a ceasefire than previous resolutions.
Have you observed the situation in the Red Sea?
Yes, indeed, we're keeping a very close eye on the matter of the Red Sea and the threats to goods that are being transported through the various crossings there, including the canal in Egypt, and the options being considered by various shipping companies and traders of using the Cape of Good Hope route. So certainly this is something we are alert to, and with colleagues in government, we are discussing and will continue to discuss with various partners as to what the eventuality may be. This confirms our fear that the longer this conflict lasts, the more the probability of drawing in many more parties to the conflict and actually having a worsening condition in terms of the global community. So we urge particularly the most powerful countries in the world that are very closely allied to Israel to give attention to ending this conflict as soon as possible.
Are we likely to see an end to this war in Ukraine?
We remain hopeful as South Africa that the conflict and war between Russia and Ukraine will be settled through a process of negotiations. You would be aware that South Africa has been participating in these peace workshop meetings, which have involved Ukraine, and in particular Ukraine's proposals on what conditions they would demand should there be negotiations. Up to this point, over 14 countries are now participating in these deliberations. In the last meeting, which was just recently held, South Africa made the proposal to Ukraine that the time may have come for Russia to be invited into these meetings so that we begin to take the steps toward a more formal process of discussing a negotiations process and a proposed settlement. So we continue to advocate for a negotiated outcome, for bringing the two parties around the table, and we're glad that many more countries are now involved in these deliberations, and there seems to be a growing view that we now need to have the two countries together in one room.
Has there been a response from Ukraine?
Well, not as yet. I suppose the advisors would have to go back to their principles to put the matter and the fact that we've now had 4 meetings. We've discussed the 10 points presented by President Zelensky. They've been refined somewhat. But now we need the other party to come into play so that real discussions can occur.
Let's turn to issues on the continent. Sudan is still a problem. It looks like the continent is failing to resolve the issue of Sudan, the conflict in Sudan.
You know, Sophie, yes, indeed, I agree with you. We're very worried about the situation in Sudan and the great increase in harm to ordinary civilians, Sudanese citizens, very, very bothered by that. I believe that through IGAD, a great deal of effort has been made to try and bring the two parties together. But at every point where it had been anticipated that the two leaders of the different forces that are fighting would come into a room to discuss ending hostilities, one or other has not turned up. So I now believe, in addition to IGAD, we need to see the African Union leadership coming into play. I know in the AU we have this practice of what is called subsidiarity, that where there's a conflict or a problem in a region, we allow the regional body to lead. I hold the view that we might be taking too long through that subsidiarity, and that the African Union needs to enter at an earlier phase. So I really would like to see the AU bringing its best efforts to bear in drawing the two parties in Sudan together and bringing a quick end to this conflict. Countries in the region are suffering great harm. Chad, for example, which is already a very poor country, which has its own challenges, is experiencing a huge influx of displaced Sudanese people and is unable to meet their needs. Humanitarian agencies are struggling to respond to these displaced persons' needs. So we really have to bring this conflict to an end, and I think greater rigor and effort to silencing the guns in Africa is necessary.
We saw many coups in West Africa. The regional organization was given responsibility to address these coups.
Well, one of the things that I do think we need, both in the UN, our multilateral global body, as well as in the African Union, is greater attention to the issue of peace enforcement. What can we do as these important institutions in the world community to protect civilians when there is conflict? When might we enter? How do we organize ourselves? Do we have sufficient resources for peace enforcement? We tend to focus on peace monitoring and have given insufficient attention to peace enforcement and to having a mechanism and institution available that can, in a rapid moment, be sent in to ensure that civilians are protected and that we can avoid harm to innocent people who have no role and have not begun a conflict. So I really think, as the AU, as the UN, we need to look at the serious issue of reform and address this inadequacy, because it cannot continue to be accepted that innocent civilians are killed, are maimed, communities are destroyed because we don't have the ability to intervene, to send in a peace enforcement force to ensure that we protect people. And I certainly would like to see more of that done.